In 1945, Japan lost World War II. 30 years after that, in 1974, a soldier returned to Japan. Why did he remain on active duty for 30 years after the war ended? Let's take a look at the life of this man. His name is Onoda. He is a serious man, a bit stubborn and logical, so he didn't have many friends. When he graduated from high school, he got a job at a trading company and went to a branch office in Shanghai. Through the job, he learned to speak Chinese. At the time, Japan was at war with the US. Onoda was drafted when he was 20 years old. He returned home from Shanghai and joined the army. Onoda was dedicated and a good student, so he received higher education to carry out special missions. He learned things a little differently than most soldiers: spying, guerrilla, sabotage, and more. Onoda enjoyed them. They matched his personality. In 1944, he was sent to the Philippines. At the time, the Philippines was Japanese territory. His mission was guerrilla warfare. He would hide in the jungle and scout for enemy movements. The commander told him the following: "Never die, even if it's for 3 or 5 years. Survive with your men." This order had an impact on Onoda's later activities. Onoda was then sent to an island. The mission was to destroy the US military infrastructure. Onoda began preparations. But 3 months after he began the mission, the island was taken over by American forces. Onoda and his men could do nothing, so they moved deeper into the mountains. Only a year after arriving in the Philippines, the war was over. His country, Japan, lost the war. At that time, besides Onoda, there were many Japanese soldiers left on the island, but in response to the call of the US Army, most of them surrendered. But Onoda refused to surrender. He believed that the Americans were spreading false information. That's what he believed. If he surrendered, he would be tortured and killed. He told his men not to surrender. Those who remained on the island with him were Akatsu, Shimada, and Kozuka. The 4 of them continued to live in the jungle. They built huts in the jungle. Their main food was bananas and coconuts. They also stole crops from the fields of the locals and robbed them. After 5 years, Akatsu finally surrendered. When Akatsu returned to Japan, he announced that there were still Japanese soldiers in the Philippines. Knowing this, the Japanese government sent officials to encourage them to return home. But Onoda was insistent. This must be a trap set by the Americans. He didn't change his mind. A few years later, Shimada was killed in a gunfight with police. Onoda and Kozuka were the only 2 left. Life in the jungle had been over 20 years. They continued to steal from the locals. They were having small clashes with the local police and the US military in the jungle. One day, they got a radio. The 2 men now had some idea of what was going on in the world, but they still refused to surrender. In 1972, Kozuka was finally killed in a gunfight with Philippine police. Onoda was left alone. He began to feel lonely. A few years passed. One day, a strange young Japanese man visited him. His name is Suzuki, a backpacker. He saw Onoda on TV and was interested in him, and came all the way to the Philippines to meet him. Suzuki was a friendly guy. He and Onoda became good friends, and they talked about the current situation in Japan. Onoda felt like going back to Japan, but he couldn't surrender without an order from his commander. Onoda said so, and Suzuki went back to Japan. Only 2 weeks later, Suzuki came again. This time there was another man. It was Onoda's commanding officer. Of course, he had already retired at the time. His commander gave him the official order to terminate his mission. Onoda suspected this was another American trap, but he finally believed it, because it was definitely the commander. He returned to Japan safely after that, for the first time in 30 years. But there was one problem. That was the crimes that Onoda had committed over the past 30 years. He killed many Filipino soldiers, police, and locals, so the Japanese government negotiated with the Philippine government. And in the end, the Japanese government decided to pay 300 million yen in compensation. In exchange, the Philippine government pardoned Onoda for all his crimes. After returning to Japan, Onoda attracted a lot of attention. The media came to cover him day after day. Onoda didn't like it. Once he was hospitalized and his strength returned to normal, he visited Shimada and Asuka's graves. Onoda didn't fit in Japan, so he moved to Brazil relying on his brother. He had been in Japan for only 6 months. He started a farm business in the countryside in Brazil. It took him 10 years to get it going. After that, he became interested in Japan again. In his later years, he returned to Japan and lived in Tokyo. Sometimes he taught survival skills to children. His skills and wisdom that survived in the jungle for 30 years fascinated many people. He had worked energetically as a lecturer and writer until his death in 2014 at the age of 91. The above is about Onoda's life. His reputation actually has been mixed. To some, Onoda was a hero. They admired him for fulfilling his duty as a soldier. He followed orders to the end while others surrendered. On the other hand, there are some negative opinions. Onoda must have known all the situation. In spite of that, he still refused to stop his activity and killed many locals, continued to commit the guerrilla battle. Some people think he kept refusing to stop for some other reason. By the way, I'm of the latter opinion. There are some contradictions in his words and actions. He seems too stubborn and irrational. What do you think of this? I'd like you to leave a comment. Thank you for watching until the end. I'll be very happy if you like this video and subscribe to my channel. See you the next time.